What's good, y'all? You dub back here again, here in 2019. Let's get it. Bringing y'all more new, fresh content. No one else is doing. Now, you see ladies and gentlemen, you see the title of this video. And some of y'all might be like, wonder, don't you often do vids talking about the martial arts and fighting? Well, yes, ladies and gentlemen, I love the martial arts and I love fighting. So that's what kind of content you also gonna get. Also, there are fans on my channel who about that life too, and who love the way of the warrior, the way of the martial artist, who, like myself, love the martial arts genre. Come on, some of the manliest stuff you can ever deal with. But this video, a little bit different from others, alright? No one ever really talks about really the types of combatants. And what I mean by the types of combatants, it's not just simple enough to be a martial artist. It's not just simple enough to be a fighter. There's more beyond that. And I was just watching, forget what channel, Montevideo? Anyway, it's a boxing channel, and it was talking about the rematch between Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz Jr. I do think Andy Ruiz Jr. is coming out with the fight because him, Tyson Wilder, and Tyson Fury, and Deontay Wilder are true fighters, okay? And their skill sets, they have unique ones. They're mad problems for AJ. I have so much I could say about the flaws of AJ and the holes in his defense and otherwise. Questionable chin, questionable stamina, and a hell of a lot more I could say. But regardless of that, that caused the gears to turn, okay? And I don't think people really understand. You see this throughout fiction. You see the approaches that people have, and it helps to understand the psyche of the character. It helps to understand the psyche of the person. It helps to understand the approach and what that person is trying to pursue, the motivations. Motivation matters to a fighter. Matters a hell of a lot. Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it for fame and money, glory, the women, all of that? Is it because this is what you love to do? Is it because it's a lifestyle that you do? Is it because this is a code of conduct, of honor that you do? Your reasons, your motivations will affect your martial art. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, it will affect which martial art you pursue. I'm not pursuing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I don't have the desires nor the perspective to pursue Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, I have no problems with Jiu-Jitsu, but I'm just letting y'all know. I am, and I may do a separate video as to why I'm a striker more than a grappler, right? I've done a video on striking versus grappling, the philosophies behind that, the psyches behind that. And if you want to go check that out, I believe that was a couple months ago. But the thing is, there's a reason why we don't just blindly do this. We don't just because, we see that. We see a lot of things. You can see pro wrestling. Not everybody becoming a pro wrestler. You see boxing. You might be a biggest boxing fan. That don't mean you lacing up those gloves, ladies and gentlemen. You could see Muay Thai and be like, oh, that shit. That don't mean you going out there throwing blows and knees. See what I'm saying? There's a reason why you do what you do. So, with that in mind, let us begin. Coming in the first one, the technician, the technical fighter. And we see this in every series. You see this in so many movies. You see this. This is the guy who is textbook, who is by the book, who throws very sharp, precise, just bam, bam, no funny business. You know what you're coming and getting out of this one. This is a person who sees and visualizes how this person was trained and perfects the mechanics. It's a very mechanically machine-driven oriented fighter. Okay? Now this type of fighter, the biggest flaw in general, there are a few exceptions, but the biggest flaw in general of this type of fighter, and I can see this flaw being as someone like Ben Askren as he got KO'd. There's multiple reasons I go into as to why Ben Askren got KO'd. But you look at this type of fighter or combatant, if you will, okay? Because I don't want to confuse that with a later introduction on this list. You see this type of combatant, and this is what Bruce Lee was against. He says, Bruce Lee said, paraphrasing obviously, that, become water, my friend. What he was saying was you got to be adaptable. You got to take the good from each school And you got to be able to mix that in with your own personal style. You have to be able to take all the elements from, let's say, a wrestling and not succumb to the weaknesses of wrestling. Don't be so by the book and rigid that you freeze up if you face a kickboxer and you're a wrestler, or if you're a boxer, you freeze up when you face a judoka, for example, right? Because you will intermingle, especially if you, God forbid, would you ever get into a street fighter or you're cross training and sparring, right? I remember there's Aikido Flow. Absolutely love that channel on YouTube. And they were talking about pressure testing, going and not just practicing your Aikido. They were talking about that's why a lot of Aikido practitioners are soft and not so good in their craft because all they do is practice soft versus other Aikido fighting. You ain't gonna see the difference in actual fighting if you don't know. But with being technical, the beautiful strengths about being technical, and I'm not a technical fighter, this is why I can appreciate this. Floyd Money Mayweather Jr., even though he had more to it, he was a technician in a lot of regards. Because when someone's so damn good at what they do, try to stop them. You look at sports and basketball, all right? You knew what Michael Jordan was going to do. Michael Jordan had 4 or 5 moves. Good luck stopping those moves. Even if you know what's coming, you know the jab's coming, you know the hook's coming, you know the straight, the front kick, the side kick, the roundhouse. You knew what's coming. Crow cop. Okay? Crow cop. You knew the kick was coming. You still try to check and he was still devastating. Right? Khabib Nurmagomedov. You know what's coming. You know he's trying to get you to the fence, maul you, and get you to the ground. You know his strikes are just setups and they ain't about no business. But he still is technically sound in his style. He knows what he's trying to be about. So that's the thing about a technician. Is they're almost machine-like. Kawhi Leonard in his past NBA playoffs, all right, if you're a basketball fan, Kawhi Leonard was to a point, to his position, okay, to get his shot off. You knew what he wanted to do. He knew you knew what he wanted to do. He was just better. And that's the thing about the technician. The technician also applies Bruce Lee's principle of practicing that punch 10,000 times rather than 10,000 punches, different punches one time. See what I'm saying? See, so there are pros and cons to everything. But moving on without beleaguering the point. 2, the strategist. Now, the strategist, this is that tactician. This is that person that's thinking. Technician, for example, you see someone like Sanji in One Piece. He's a technician, right? Strategist, you see Usopp. You see Josu Jojo Joestar. You see Captain Irwin from Shingeki no Kyojin / Attack on Titan. These guys come up with the big plays. They stay trying to set you up wildly. These are the wily dudes. All right, if you go back to boxing history, Archie Moore, the old Mongol, he was wily. You go back to you get recently Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao. The reason he beat Keith Thurman is because of his strategy game, bro. He unfortunately ran up against someone like arguably the greatest defensive fighter in boxing history, and Floyd Money Mayweather Jr. got exposed. But it is what it is. But this dude, these strategies, they come up with unorthodox plays. They use guerrilla warfare tactics. They set you up 2, 3, 4. They playing chess pieces. They seeing the board. They playing advanced level checkers. They are setting you up with 4 plays ahead of what you even see. And so you go in here, you throw the jab. That person looking already see, I'm gonna sidestep, turn you. I'm gonna walk duck under, sidestep, turn you, and then fire you with a right. Mike Tyson, even though he wasn't a strategist, used to do this all the time. That's part of the reason he was so dominant. All right, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, like all the greats, even if they're not pure strategists, their fighting IQ allows them to do this. Now imagine you face someone like Pac-Man. See, Keith Thurman lost because of the experience of Pac-Man, but it was Pac-Man's mind. Floyd talked about it. He talked about Pac-Man's mind. And it's so important. It's so vitally important to understand this. The flaws of the strategies is if the plans don't work, what they got. That's part of the reason that Pac-Man got torched. That's part of the reason that Pac-Man walked into that punch which KO'd him by Marquez. You see what I'm saying? So you can be the strategist. You just have to be mentally right. Because if you come in thinking you just gonna simply just overpower them, nah, fam, you fell into a first basic trap. See what I'm saying? It's like going up against somebody like Shikamaru and Naruto, right? You go into Shikamaru to all soft, all willy-nilly, Shikamaru gonna eat you alive. But if you come in with Shikamaru with a plan, with a game plan, oh, Shikamaru done. He getting dusted, son. So, if that makes sense. Moving on. Number 3, the duelist. The honorable warrior. It's all about honor. They take you on. They're not looking they're not looking for brutality. They're not looking, unlike the technician, they may be technical, they may have some strategy, but none of that's important. It's all a matter of honor. Okay. This goes back to, if you go back to the time of dueling with whether it be swords or guns, pistols. It's this this mindset of a purpose driven, in some cases righteous, but purpose driven a code of conduct, and they conduct themselves in that kind of way, in that kind of manner. Now, that doesn't mean they can't be brutal, because when it comes to combat, it is brutal by nature. Like, you can't get around it. You smash a man in the face with your hands, with your feet, with your bows, with your knees, with a weapon. You smash, slash, pierce. Those are brutal actions, but it's a purity to it, if you will. And we see some of the guys when they fight, they're very calm, very mellow, very about their business. But you can see they're on very, in a lot of cases, spiritual with it, or in their way, they're kind of on this elegant playing field with it, if you will. It's kind of like I was talking in a recent One Piece video about chivalry. These guys have a code that they follow, even if they're not explicitly saying it. You can tell by the way that they do. If you ever see a fighter, you know, that comes into a situation isn't really about fighting, but if their honor, the feel that the honor has been harmed, then they will act, and they will act with a deadly vengeance. But afterwards, it's all done. If they're in the cage fighting or prize fighting, right? They're doing this for their family, they're doing this for the culture, they're doing this for the background. But no harm. You see some guys, some of the nicest guys, but inside those lines, in that square circle, as they say, or in that octagon, all business, all can unleash holy hell on you. But before and after, nothing but genuinely respect. Keep in mind about those guys. Now, the problems of those is they might not be savage enough in this brutal game. All right, you gotta have sometimes some of that savagery. Even someone like Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, they could be savage. Joe Louis could be savage. You see what I'm saying? You need some of that savagery. So that's the only issue I have with these kind of guys, is they might not have that killer mentality all the time triggered. Okay? You can't just allow for external stimuli to motivate you. You have to have an internal motivating factor. Keep that in mind about fighting. Moving on to the fourth kind, the fighter. This is why I said, combatant, and I know I've mixed in fighter, but the fighter type of combatant, rather than all the rest of the type of fighters, right? The fighter type of combatant, you see a guy like Luffy, you see a guy like Hanma Baki, okay? You see a guy from, obviously, the Baki series, Luffy from One Piece, obviously. You see a guy like, let's say, Miyazawa Kiichi from the Tough series, and Koko Tekken Den Tough, okay? You see a guy like, would you say Kamishiro Yu? He's kind of a martial artist, but you might want to throw in you, whether in a martial artist or in a fighter. But let's just go with Kamishiro Yu as far as in Holy Land. These guys as fighters, man, win, lose or draw, these are probably martial artists too, but these are probably my favorite type of combatants. Favorite type, win, lose or draw, you know what you're gonna get out of them, dude. Win, lose or draw, they're bringing that fire. They're fighting for the sake of fighting. And not for stupid. They're not just fighting, but they're fighting for the sake of fighting. Okay? Nothing more, nothing less. You're getting a purity of fighting. And when you have a purity of fighting, you're embracing everything. That's why I mentioned Luffy freestyle fighting. You mentioned Kiichi. All right, Kiichi was just doing his. Yes, he utilized the skills from what he was taught, but he was doing his own thing. Baki doesn't even have a style, bro. Really. I mentioned Kamishiro Yu. Took in and incorporated using his fighting genius, mixed and matched, and made up his own style. Like, there are almost no flaws to this style. I mean, you could say that the fighter, it's really about the individual, but the fighter, I don't really see a flaw so much in the fighter. It's just that the fighter has to grow as an individual. And that's the only thing, is if the fighter doesn't mature mentally and emotionally, forget the physicality. The physicality is going to be there. The gifts are going to be there. The spiritual, he's going to have the motivation. He doesn't have the problem with a lot of these other ones with the motivating factor. But the fighter just has to mature as a man, as a person. And that's the only issue I have. You have some people who are great fighters, but they lose because they weren't mentally there. And y'all know how it's always say it's 90 or 95% a mental game. See? So that's the only drawback. If the fighter has that mental and emotional game along with being a fighter, oh, the fighter is going to be a true legend without question. Going to be on the all-time greats, and that's just what it is. Coming up right after that, you have the martial artist, which I absolutely love too. The way of the warrior, the lifestyle. Okay, your entire life is the martial arts, and it doesn't. And it's not very small percentage is actual combat, actual training. It's how you perceive and how you carry yourself throughout life. The only issue with the martial artist is if the martial artist loses his way. Okay, similar to the fighter. These to me are the two best versions of a combatant because you have all the tools there. You just have to apply them. The martial artist has to make sure he keeps maintained in his life, in his perspective, and doesn't allow himself to get clouded. One of the scenes I absolutely love is one of the deepest scenes in Dragon Ball, and a lot of people miss this, is the whole T scenes with Zamasu and Gawasu. Okay, Gawasu was saying for Zamasu, you can't have clouded judgment. You can't be impure. You have to be right minded. You have to be focused. Okay? And that's the whole point of the martial artist. If the martial artist gets unfocused, the martial artist has problems. To allow life's problems to infect him, then he loses his art. He loses his high level of skill. And that's what the martial artist has over other types of combatants, is his high level of skill. He starts getting loose. He's not concise with his hits. He's not, you know, utilizing his techniques to a proper fashion. So he would then lose to the technician because he's not utilizing techniques good enough. He would lose to the strategist because he's not thinking straight. He would lose to the duelist because the duelist is fighting for a reason that the martial artist is not. He would then lose to the warrior, you know, oh well, I forgot about the warrior, but we'll get in that in a second. But he would lose to the fighter because the fighter's always about that life, unless the fighter, is mentally not there. But speaking of which, the warrior was actually right after, in between the martial artist and the fighter on my list. But anyways, the warrior, the way of the warrior, um, similar to the martial artist. But this one, if you think of the martial artist as you think of Son Goku and Tien Shinhan, right? Versus Vegeta. Vegeta is a warrior. Um, Piccolo is more so a warrior too. Just how they act. The warrior is controlled savagery. Okay, it's Musashi Miyamoto in every single iteration is a warrior, right? You can have the greatest martial arts skills or whatever, but it's how you approach the battlefield. The martial artist is coming in with the art of it, the aspect in that regard, the lifestyle. The warrior is all life is prepared for the battlefield. It doesn't mean you out here fighting all the time, but you're consistently preparing for the battlefield. Great example in the Baki series, you had Motobe Sensei, right? You had Motobe Ryo. And that's what was stated. Motobe Ryo couldn't really go all out till he fought Musashi Miyamoto because Motobe Ryo is designed for war. Period. That's why I call him Hachiman, the god of war. Okay, the true god of war, not Orochi Dopo, no disrespect. But his entire life is geared for the battlefield. If there's no battlefield, then that's the problem with the warrior. The warrior, if you ever see a fighter who's like this, they are the most active of all fighters. They have the most fights generally. Okay, there are a few exceptions, but generally these guys have a long track record of fights, right? The thing is, and I mean, some of them are good. They don't need the money or anything. They just need the battlefield. But if they don't have it, then either personally they're like they can go off the rails, or they're just itching to get into their ring. You see some guys that play sports that have this mentality, the way of the word, they need to play. And retirement is just like, no, this is my life, bro. This is what I do. This is what I was born to do. And that's the problem with the way of the warrior. It's not so much in how he interacts inside that battlefield. It's everything else of dealing with the rest of life. If the warrior is unsettled, and for him, it's not the mental and emotional, it's the spiritual, it's the soul. But that's a whole other topic of discussion that I can get into. Coming up next is the killer. All right. We talk about killer instinct. Now, I'm not saying that these other ones cannot have the killer instinct, but a killer, person who fights in a very survivalistic mentality, a person who sees death and destruction. That doesn't mean he will straight up kill, but this person is this person, for them fighting is survival. For them fighting is an elevated form of living. It's a kill or be killed world, and I'm going to execute. You look at how Big George Foreman fought in his young years. You look at how Deontay Wilder approaches life. Deontay Wilder's the nicest guy, but when he get in that battlefield, when he get in that ring, he's a pure killer. Same thing happened with Foreman. There's other guys, but those two are very noteworthy, right? They're looking to destroy, seek and destroy. Now, here's the thing. The only issue with the killer is if the killer lacks self-control, lacks discipline, and just goes out there and embraces his purely brutal side. It was what happened with Anakin Skywalker when he became Vader, and why he lost to Obi-Wan Kenobi, even though he's more powerful, you could argue more skilled. But, well, then again, Obi-Wan Kenobi was the master of Sarisu Form 3, so the ultimate defense, so he kind of was a beautiful counter. But the reason he really lost is because Anakin lost, he went off the rails. And that's the only issue with these type of combatants, if they go completely off the rails. So you see that with most of these combatants, it's not so much the technical aspects, it's the issues of what's going on with the person. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. Following up with that, we have the assassin, ladies and gentlemen. Now you say, well, killer and assassin, what's the difference? An assassin is more of a professional mindset, like your hitman, like where it comes from. The assassin is going in there, getting a job done, getting it out. All right, special forces type. Killer Zodic expressed this very, very well, right? Where he was talking to Morel. I always bring up the Morel scene because I absolutely loved it. Morel's like, in a wild fight, you can't, in a wild nin battle, you don't know what your opponent's abilities are. You can't just go in there with your plans and whatever. You can't just infiltrate, just look at it, sneak in and sneak out. But there's not necessarily anything wrong with the assassin. They're precise. They're usually some of the most technical, some of the best of the best. You have to be highly skilled. And in the world, let's say you are living as an assassin, in a world of killers, you are the best of the best. But see, here's the issue when it comes to assassin. What happens if you're not facing in a world of killer? What happens if you're not facing someone who doesn't use conventional means, right? Well, then you can very likely lose to someone less skilled. You bring up Bullseye, for example, in Marvel Comics, okay? Deadshot, Frank Lawton. You look at Deathstroke, Slade Wilson. they could all lose to somebody like Batman Bruce Wayne. They could all lose to somebody like Daredevil Matt Murdock, even though these guys don't kill. They could lose to someone like the Punisher Frank Castle. Frank does kill. But still, why? Because they get too caught up in the lethal and the precise movements. And they forget the whole aspect of combat. Now, I'm not saying that those specific fighters won't, but I'm just giving you examples of how matchups against other highly competent fighters who are not so focused on on the execution of the objective can overcome. You see, styles make fights, ladies and gentlemen. And when you're on an even playing field, your psychology brings into the situation. Rumble in the Jungle. Why was Ali able to take down Foreman while Foreman was able to take down Smoking Joe Frazier? Think on these things. These matters. When you make predictions for fights, or when you go back and you say, why did somebody lose here or somebody win here? There was reasons for that. There are reasons for that. But moving on. Number 9, the pacifist. You can say, how is the pacifist a combatant if he doesn't want to fight? You can think of someone like a lot of scholar monks. You can think of, I always bring up Gohan, right? Gohan, to me, he just learned how to throw hands with this tournament of power arc, really. Just because he had the talent, because he had the power, he was overpowering. But once he, in this tournament, before this tournament, whichever version you want to go by, manga or anime, it's the same result. Piccolo trained him, and Piccolo said everything that I said. He's like, Gohan, all you do is you get all kind of emotional and you go from there. Gohan doesn't like to fight. All right, he doesn't want to fight. But there are times in life where you might have to fight, especially if you're a highly skilled combatant. And so for the pacifist who doesn't want to fight, who doesn't want to embrace the violence and whatnot, too easy to, if you will, fall in death with the dark side. All right. It's like certain Jedi tapping into the dark side. They can't just tap into the dark side or have certain dark side moves. No, they fall all the way into the dark side. Okay? And I don't mean, just be a Sith Lord or just utilize the dark. Be a dark Jedi. No. They fall full blown harder than some Sith fall into the dark because they have no control. And that's the thing. For the pacifist who is involved in an activity, who he's diametrically opposed to from a philosophical perspective, when you get in that battlefield and you have to embrace these things, this is why the martial arts are so vital to someone like this. Because when you get in this, you know how to operate. You can follow your pacifism and get out, or you can follow a martial art. This is why, for the pacifist, what fighting style you choose is vital. For the pacifist, I would suggest more so grappling techniques because you can control that. Something like Aikido, okay? Something like something like Aikido would be great for many pacifists. Something like boxing, okay? I would suggest boxing because boxing teaches a hell of a lot about control. I'm not saying that other martial arts don't, but you don't want to have a pacifist use something like pancration. See what I'm saying? Or necessarily like Muay Thai, where you really can destroy, okay, the opponent. You want them to remain in control. And if you're dealing with a child like this who's a pacifist, you can notice that the emotional turmoil. And I have some friends who are pacifists. When they get in this, either they freeze up or they lash out. There's no kind of control at all. They're really mellow generally, but then they freak the hell out when they're facing that kind of conflict and contact. And finally, last but not least, you could have said I could have started out with this one, but this one I wanted to add on the list because I think it's vital to understand, especially for those who make it to big time. I think of people like Anthony Joshua when I think of this. The celebrity, all right? People who fight for the fame and fight for the glory. They talk a good game or whatever, but you see how they fight. They don't have the passion. They're not what I consider true fighters. They can fight. They get involved in professional, combat sports. They get involved, in the amateur world. They get involved in the dojos. They get involved and they want to make a name for themselves. Now, Musashi Miyamoto kind of showcases, he's going to war for the fame and stuff, but he follows the way of the warrior without question. It's just that he wants to be compensated. That's his personal vice. But the thing about it with these celebrity guys, one second. The thing about it with these celebrity guys is that you have to always question the passion. They can have great technique, even though that can get sloppy. They could have, the skills. They could have the prerequisites, but without the passion, baby, without that fire that the fighter has. You look at the Rocky 3. I'll end it with this, right? Rocky 3, Eye of the Tiger. Rock, you gotta have the eye of the tiger. You hear the killer instinct, the killer mentality. You gotta have these if you're going in there, going to war with someone, right? You gotta have it. And it's a different problem because the pacifist can still have the eye of the tiger because you want to protect your peace. All the rest of these can have the eye of the tiger. But that celebrity fighter, shit, and you can say, well, why is this person even a fighter in the begin with? That's my point. This is that one that shouldn't even be on the list. But he is because he's competing. See what I'm saying? So I had to talk about him a little bit. Unexpected warning, like, comment, subscribe. Tell me your thoughts on this. I know this video ran lengthy, right? But I wanted to present my perspective and open up the dialogue about this kind of stuff because no one really ever really wants to talk about this stuff. They're just like, oh, fighters and whatever, and just pushing this hodgepodge, this melting pot of stuff that doesn't make sense. You have to understand that different people come into these different games, into this competition, sometimes lethal competition, for different reasons and with different mentalities. And if you don't come in with the right mentality, if you don't understand the kind of person you're up against, if you come in and think, if you're a technical fighter and coming up against a fighter, right? If you're a technician coming up against a fighter, or a strategist, you might get owned. Or a martial artist, they may pull out some unorthodox stuff you've never seen before. And your ass gonna get home. You're gonna get sent home with a hardcore L. If you come in here trying to be celebrity and come against a fighter, a martial artist who hungry, a warrior, who about this, who will fight to death, you sitting here like, whoa, bro. Whoa, why are you taking it so seriously? Bro, I'm trying to tell y'all, these people about that life. All right, y'all. Have a beautiful day, beautiful night. Peace. Give me your thoughts. I will absolutely love what you have to say. And let me know if there's any more videos you would like me to do.